Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Behind the Tools. Now, despite their talent for the trades, tradeswomen make up just under 5% of the global industry. Now, that's a figure that's barely changed over the last decade, and so there's still huge room for improvement when it comes to diversity and inclusion within the trades industry. And we want to be part of driving this change. So for this month, we'll be talking to a number of hardworking women from all over the world to find out the great work they're doing, but also to get more insight into their journey and ways they're working to push for a more inclusive industry. Enjoy the episode. Happy Women in Trades Month. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Behind the Tools. Delighted this week that we have Verity. Verity is the founder of TradieWives, which many of you, if you're in Australia, so Verity is based on the northern beaches of Sydney in Australia. So if you're in Australia, you've probably heard of TradieWives, and we'll get into that in a bit more detail. But Verity is also a co-director in a landscaping business, as well as has a ton of experience in the trades. Verity, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's great to have you on the show. Maybe just to sort of kick things off, Verity, it'd be great to hear a bit about kind of how you got into the trades, right? So you're a founder and director of a landscaping business with your husband, Craig. It'd be great to hear how that came about and sort of what attracted you to the trades.
Yeah, so Craig had been in business for many years before he and I met. So he had a pretty well-established business, always a sole trader. And then sort of I came along, and over the years I watched him struggle, really. Just being on the tools all day, coming home and just being in piles and piles of paperwork, just not getting on top of things, and just, he had no social media. I don't think the website had been touched for years. Like, it was just, he had so much potential, but he couldn't do it all by himself. So it was just sort of a point where he needed help. And I felt like, that was something I could bring. My background's in marketing and advertising, so I felt like I could bring some value. And so we sort of had a conversation about that. And I was like, maybe if I just start one day doing a few things here and there just to give you a hand. And then, slowly it kind of built and was really good. So just kept going.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's not an uncommon story, actually. It's, in fact, actually we have a board member, Anne Timpany, who kind of co-founded a large plumbing business in the UK. Very similar. She had a background in sales and marketing. Similar thing. Her husband was on the tools and could see that gap in terms of running the business. And was it the opportunity in terms of growth that attracted you, or was it more or could you also see the burden in terms of stress of trying to keep up with the kind of back office stuff that maybe was probably not what Craig enjoys as much?
Yeah, definitely not. And so I think it was a balance. Like, it was very much initially wanting to take the burden away, like take the stress away if I could. But yeah, definitely I could see potential. He's so great at what he does. And I was like, you could really, make this into something big, because, you're very talented, but you just don't have the time, or the will to do the back office side of things.
And where did you, I noticed on the website, and so if you are looking for landscapers in Sydney, if you're in the Sydney area, I presume you cover most of the Sydney area, it's Evolution Construction and Landscapes, and there's some great pictures of the work you've done historically. How did you, what was the first thing that you fixed in the business, do you think, when you came in? What's the first thing you addressed?
Just systems, I think. There was obviously no bookkeeping system or anything. He'd sort of been through a few different accountants, had a few issues there, didn't really sort of connect with accountants. I think that's really important. He sort of never found anyone he could connect with to support him through what he was doing. And so, there was just tax stuff, mountains of paperwork. It was a schmozzle. And so that's what I addressed. I sort of came into the business saying, I don't want to touch the books. I'm not good at it. I don't like it. It's not something that, I want to do. But I slowly ended up, we downloaded Xero. We sort of got trained in that a little bit. I just sort of did a few bits and pieces here and there. And so, it kind of just went from there. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
And and your role in the business now, where do you spend most of your time?
I've sort of pulled back a little bit. If you ask Craig, he'll be like, hey, remember me? So I've pulled back a little bit. So I'm mainly just doing the social media, the website, the invoicing. Craig's sort of much more organized now than he was. He's got a great team. So so things are pretty good. So I'm just mainly doing the social media side, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, and you're really good at that, which we'll get to when we talk about TradieWives. But so talk me through the journey. So it sounds like you've got more employees now. How did that play out? Where did you see the growth?
Well, I just saw, he had so much work coming in, but he didn't have the manpower to do it. So it was really important to sort of find somebody to try and grow. We were lucky enough to have some sort of friends who were looking for work at the time, so we onboarded them. Craig knew of somebody at a hardware shop that was wanting to do the trade, so that sort of just organically came about. It was really important because there was so much work at the time. But he just didn't have the manpower to do it, so it was really important to have a team, and I think it makes it much more enjoyable to share it with other people on site, rather than being on your own.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sole traders that I speak to and probably listen to this. It can be, I think they enjoy the interaction when they work with other companies that are working on a job, like if it's a building renovation and there's a plumber and an electrician.
That's right.
It can be quite difficult otherwise. And is there anything from your experience that you wish you'd known about the trades before you? I mean, you probably knew a bit because obviously you were married to your husband, so you had the experience of what he was going through. But is there anything you look at from a business experience point of view you wish you'd known before getting into the trades, or any advice for anyone else that is embarking on the same journey?
I think looking back now, I think that, it's okay to outsource things is what I learned. I tried to do everything by myself. Felt like, no, I've got to do this by myself. I can't outsource, I really should be the one doing it. And now I look back and, things that took me 10 hours would take somebody else who knew what they were doing 20 minutes. So I think that's really important to know, that you don't feel like you have to do it all yourself, and that you can outsource the things, particularly that you don't enjoy, because generally they take longer and more headspace. So definitely knowing where to outsource.
And is that, the example you're giving, would that be the bookkeeping side of things?
Yeah. Definitely the bookkeeping. Definitely that. Even stuff, like the website, some of the things on the website that I get stuck on, the tech side of things, I'd be trying to sort out and Google, and, it takes somebody who knows what they're doing 5 minutes to fix something. So just having the right support.
And do you think that's the resistance to doing that? It's not really resistance, but the reason people don't do that, you think that's a cost, or what's the driver, do you think?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it is, the cost. It's the feeling like you're coming on board, so you should be the one, to do it all. And I also think it's not knowing who to ask, where to look, what exactly you need. I think it's a combination of those things.
And do you think Craig would have got to an outsource point at some moment in time if you hadn't prompted him? I mean, that's the thing I often see with a lot of companies, is they sort of just keep going and do the 10 hours at the table on a Sunday or whatever, just trying to catch up with paperwork. It's one of the challenges is sort of that acknowledgement of, I've got a system. I think for a lot of people, their system probably feels like it's working, but in the absence of seeing the alternative, they just keep going. Do you think he just kept going as he was?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. Still now, I think he would have just been sort of doing the same thing and still, not getting on top of things. And he definitely, I don't think would have outsourced. He wouldn't have had that sort of push to outsource things.
Yeah. And then aside from the early days of sort of bookkeeping, which, some people love, and it's great to find those people that enjoy that. I'm not one of them. And, our finance team here would readily tell you that. But I guess, what were the other sort of challenges you faced growing the business in that period?
Just sort of researching the right systems and processes, and having, like formal things in place, like a formal process from, when you get your first lead to the completion of the job. So also things like having great terms and conditions, and, addressing things like when people don't pay, what do you do? And making sure they're getting invoiced and reminders, and, and then the follow-up's really good, and, that you keep them, on board for next time they want to have something done. So it was really just implementing that process from lead to, completion and after the job.
And how did you decide on some of that stuff? I mean, you had a great background in sales and marketing, but how did you decide on the best way to approach? I'm presuming you already had a pretty good sense of, or created, of pricing, but how did you approach, things like collecting money and chasing for payment and all those in terms and conditions? And
it was really hard. It was just a lot of research, actually. It was just a lot of Google. And I actually used to email local landscapers, other local landscapers, and be like, oh, hi, this is my story. Just wondering if you could give me some advice about this, this, and this, and, you know, what sort of things you found help. And no one ever would reply to me. I never got one reply.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, I was
no.
not expecting. I was about to say, one of the things that's really pleasantly surprised me being more involved in trade companies is how helpful people are to each other, even in the same local area. But
yeah,
you're saying the opposite. You didn't get a reply. That's interesting.
Maybe it went to junk. I don't know. but no. So I never got any replies, and that's again sort of how, you know, how TradieWives was born, and I wanted to connect with people. But yeah, it was sort of just a lot of Googling, and then just just sort of looking at, I guess, other businesses from afar.
And is there any advice to other people? I mean, one of the things I've seen that has been quite effective is joining local business networks, which can help you find accountants and other services. Would you recommend that? Have you done that at all?
We haven't, no, but we've had friends of ours that have done that, who have found it really helpful. Things like, you know, the business networking, you know, BNI groups and that sort of stuff, who they've joined them, and they've been really happy with that sort of stuff, finding that network. But it's not something that we've ever done.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting because, like I say, I have spoken to quite a few business owners who either worked for a previous trade company and they just went to their kind of old boss and said, hey, how did you price? How did you think about, you know, invoicing and payment terms? Or they've just spoken to other companies in the same region. And like I say, I have been surprised how helpful. It's nice that people will help each other. And that's not always the case. Not always the case. And then, you know, one of the things we've talked about on this podcast previously is the sort of you know, small number of women that are still in trades as a percentage of overall trades across the world. It's pretty much the same in most countries. Some are slightly more advanced than others. What's your perspective on that? And, you know, coming into the trades as you did, and now helping sort of run a trade company, and we'll get to TradieWives, which is obviously a really important part of making that more of a reality. What's your perspective on that?
I think it's something that, you know, I think women are still a bit apprehensive when it comes to coming into the trades, and something that I've seen a lot is they feel like they're not taken seriously, and that's something that, you know, a lot of people have experienced, where they come into the trade and they're sort of, you know, it's still quite male dominated, and they feel a bit like, you know, no one will take them seriously, to a point where I know people who have sort of been in my role, and they speak to people and they say, oh, you know, can I just speak to your husband? I don't, you know.
Really?
Or bypass you,
Is that generational, do you think? Is that still generational more? I've heard that. I spoke to a UK tradesperson a while back, and they talked about a very similar example where they sort of turned up to the job, and it was an older guy who was like, oh, I don't think you're not a plumber, or some words to that effect. Is that, do you see that?
Yeah, I do. I think, look, it is shifting. I feel like it is shifting, but I think it is, you're right, the older sort of generation who are still very set in, no, it's a male industry. You know, females aren't meant to do trades. And I do think it's generational. I think it's definitely, you see that in the older sort of market.
Right. And what do you think will change it?
Look, I think more awareness about, you know, females in trades. I think it is becoming, you know, sort of bigger, but I just think more awareness of, you know, the support that's out there for women looking to enter a trade. That, you know, it's just the knowledge. I know that there's a few people who I follow, female tradies over on Instagram, who are just doing such great things for the awareness of females in trades. And, you know, I think it's just really great programs and, you know, events for just female tradies. So I just think it's creating more awareness around it.
Right. Yeah, I think the social media stuff has really helped with some of that, because I think it's given people who they can aspire to follow. See the work they're doing, see that it's a great career to be in, all those things that go with that. So that seems to be a good direction. I think it helps in general for the whole ecosystem, just in terms of education and getting more people into trades anyway. But that's often, I think, some of the problems start education, which is schools sometimes have a perception around what they think somebody looks like that should work in the trades, and that doesn't help actually across the board. And then what prompted you? So I'm going to now talk about TradieWives. For those people outside of Australia, TradieWives is a massively successful group on Facebook and broaden that. Actually have a publication as well. My numbers are out of date. I haven't spoken to you just before we came live on air, which is that I think you now have 15,000 subscribers to TradieWives.
Yeah, 14 and a half now, we're at.
14 and a half. Okay, maybe be 15 by the time we publish this. Yes.
Hopefully.
Yeah, which is incredible. That's a really big number of people. That's a big community in Australia. Yeah, talk to me about what prompted that and how you decided to set that up.
So it was, I guess, in the early days of working with Craig, as I said, emailing local landscapers for help. And, obviously I had business experience, but I didn't have specifically trade experience. So I really struggled with that. And I didn't know where to look for help with, the website or a good accountant or, how to go about employing somebody. And so sort of, one day I was thinking about it and I thought, there's got to be other women out there doing what I'm doing. And it would be great to connect with them and be able to sort of bounce ideas off them and ask questions. And so I started the Facebook group and I was like, this is stupid. No one is going to join this. This is ridiculous. Yeah. It was so embarrassing. And then my friend said to me, look, 20 people join, you've got 20 people. And I said, I'd tell you 20 people aren't going to join this. Anyway, so I started that. It sort of took off and I felt like I'd found people who were feeling exactly like I was. And it kind of grew from there and it sort of became apparent that people were feeling like they didn't know where to look for support. They didn't know who to trust or, what exactly they knew they needed help, but they didn't know exactly what they needed. Yeah. And so, I'd sort of watch the group and I'd see people give each other advice that, people were trying to be helpful, but it wasn't necessarily the correct advice for them. And so that's how the directory was born, where I found, I wanted to work with businesses who I could sort of trust to direct the members to for that support and be able to kind of direct them to what they needed. And, having you guys on board is just such a privilege. It's just been so wonderful to work with you and to be able to have our members be directed to somewhere where, I can say, oh, this is what you need. This is who can help you.
No, it's a privilege for us to be associated with it. To be honest, it's a great group, and it makes complete sense why you set it up. And what was I'm always intrigued with these things. What was the thing that sort of spurred the growth? What was the moment where do you just do a post and suddenly lots of people suddenly start joining, or what happened there?
Yeah, I just sort of, I was in a few other Facebook groups, and I remember in one particular group putting it out there saying, if I was to start this group, I'm in this position, would anyone be interested? And everyone was like, wow, yes, we'd be really interested for that. And so that's how it started. And I just sort of was in other Facebook groups and would just, tell the story of what I was doing and, say if there's any other women out there feeling like me, like you're welcome to join this. And then, people just it just sort of took off. So I felt like I'd hit something where people were feeling like this and hadn't really spoken about it.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I think actually the sort of trades in general could do with more communities like this. And I think I've seen it happen across social media a lot more, even on Instagram, where tradespeople are helping tradespeople, even in different countries actually, that have similar problems who are in the same industry. So it's a very powerful vehicle. And what was the main, when you sort of talk about the advice that people were looking for or giving initially, what are the main themes that you tend to see people struggle with that they come to the site for?
Definitely employing people. That's a huge thing. Not knowing how to onboard somebody, not knowing how to sort of manage a team, and not knowing how to, have a number of employees clocking in and out, and how to communicate with people on different sites. If you're a plumber or an electrician, you've got a number of people out on different sites, like how you can all communicate and, send jobs out and that sort of thing. So that was really, but I think people just really didn't know, what support was out there. So, so that's something that's been really great to sort of bring to light, what is around that can help people.
And do you still see sort of users in the community really helping each other still? Is that still a big driver of it, even outside of the directory?
Yeah, absolutely. It is such a lovely group of people. I feel very lucky. Everyone is just so willing to go out of their way to jump on and help. And it's just, the things I've seen have just been so amazing. I feel very lucky.
And as a group, I mean, obviously the title kind of as a giveaway of the group. I presume it's got broader than that, right? It's probably just lots of people that are actually involved in trade business in general. Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of female tradies coming in now, which is great. There's obviously businesses that come in who support the trades in the running of their business, and trading mums, which is awesome. A lot of mums that are doing the back office side of stuff for their kids who are in the trade. So it's awesome.
And what's next? What's the I mean, it'd be great to hear a bit about what you think next, but also, sorry, I missed it. I was quite interested in the sort of magazine as well, and what prompted that. Before we get to the what's next, maybe we talk about that, because some people here might not have seen that.
So that was just sort of I had a friend of mine working for me for a little while, and one day we were out. Wouldn't it be great to start a magazine where we could just get our partners to feature articles on things that might be helpful, also a bit of lifestyle stuff to make it a bit fun, a bit of entertaining reading. So we just thought, it'd be so great to just spotlight some of our members as well, like sort of tell their story in it. And so we just sort of, it was just kind of a pass off idea that we sort of developed into quite a few issues of it coming out, and people really enjoying the magazine. So we've sort of had it on pause for a couple of months, but we're hoping to get the next edition out in the next sort of month or two. So
cool, fantastic. And that goes to all of your subscribers?
Yeah, it's everyone on our mailing list, so we send it out to everybody on there.
Cool, great. Yeah, it's great. It's a great read. We get a copy here, and highly recommend it. And so what's next? What's the longer term plan?
So for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to do events. I've really wanted to be able to meet people who I've been speaking to for so many years, and all the partners, and really connect with everybody rather than just over Facebook, over the computer. So COVID has sort of been a bit of a pain with getting that organized. We sort of set something up and then we're in a lockdown again, and so it's been quite frustrating, but I feel like, fingers crossed, we're at the tail end of things now. So
I completely agree. Every time I say that, I sort of 1 year later find myself having to correct myself, but this time it feels like we might be seeing seeing the end of the tunnel.
I feel like I don't know how much longer we can all go on like this, but I feel like it's sort of out there now, and I think that hopefully they're not going to lock us in anymore. So definitely events is sort of something that I want to get going and be able to actually meet people face to face.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I mean, you've got so many members that you could do it. And would you do that regionally, or?
I'd probably start locally, and then definitely go into probably out to the other states and everything like that. But the first one would probably be local, and then we'd go from there and keep it going.
Yeah. Do you have a concentration of people in different parts of Australia? Is there more?
Yeah. Sydney and Queensland are the biggest ones, closely followed by Melbourne.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that aligns with the population density. Yeah, cool, great, fantastic. And any advice to people that maybe are thinking about getting into the trades? Have you got any advice from your experience you would give people? I
think just find the right support. I think that would be my advice. Is don't feel like you're on your own, and you're the problems that you're facing, you're alone in that. Like, there are other people who are going through the same thing. So it's just about finding the right network, the right community to support you through the journey.
And have you seen, as a result of sort of TradieWives and everything else you've done, have you seen more women coming into the trades? You referenced that there are more sort of female tradies actually coming into the group. Have you seen a sort of increase in the last year or so?
I have, yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that has been talked about more. It's in the media a lot more, I think. And like I was saying before, social media, it's a lot of female tradies, creating these Instagram accounts and having social media followings where they're really, inspiring other women to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And then the other area that we've often talked about is around mental health. And I feel like these sort of groups are a really powerful way to help manage some of that stuff, because, running a trades business, especially if you're a sole trader, even if you're not, is very, very stressful. There's payroll, there's, supplier payments, getting money from your customers. There's all those things in between, and your small businesses, it's not easy. I'm presuming a group like TradieWives must be really powerful at helping address some of those issues that people are facing within businesses.
Yeah, and I think it's given them a space to be able to say it, and to get the support. I think people, they bottle it up, and I think a lot of women have seen their partners, really struggling and, really spiraling, and things can get to you when people aren't paying, when cash flow is bad, when, you're facing these big issues in the business. It can really affect your mental health. And I think the wives sort of watch on and see that, and they come to the group and they say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think? And everyone jumps on and says, oh, yep, we've been here. We do this, we do this, here's the right support to connect with. Like, it's great that you've actually said it out loud, because now you can fix it.
Yeah, that's the thing I think is really great about these groups on social media, is that even if someone, they're in the same business, they've experienced it, just even telling the story around what they went through and knowing that you're not the only person that's been through it, I think is powerful. I think often if you're in a trade company, it can be quite lonely, and people don't necessarily realize there is this whole group of other people who historically didn't talk about these things as well. I think that's part of the problem, is it was probably lonely because they weren't talking about it. So they assume that, it's just me suffering through this, and it's not. So I think that's really powerful. That's great. And it's a great testament to the group that you can do that. We always finish on a few questions, which I'm going to short fire them to you now. If you were on the tools, what trade would you pick?
To be honest, I'd be hopeless at everything. So I'm going to go with carpentry, I think.
Carpentry. It's quite popular. It does end up being quite popular. People like building stuff. I think that's something that I would do. Cool. And then your biggest pet peeve at work, if there was one?
Oh, late payers.
I think everyone's with you on that.
Late payers, they can take a hike.
It's an area we've become pretty focused on, even with our product, not to talk about Tradify, but just in general. I think it's an area that trying to get payment earlier just to solve that, because you're right, it's just such a drain on, well, A, there's cash flow, B, there's the effort to try and chase these people down, and then figuring out actually maybe it's not the right customer, and you won't always know that until afterwards, right, when it's too late. So I think everyone suffers with that one. And then go to team lunch when you get together.
Got to be the toasties. We love a toasty. We love getting the toasty machine out and doing them, and we're all a big.
Do you fancy toasties, or just cheese on Reubens, or like a?
No, we're ham, cheese, tomato.
Oh, okay.
Very, very basic, but the classics, I think.
Well, I recommend getting a jar of sauerkraut and sticking that with some cheese. You won't, and a little bit of sriracha or a bit of chili oil, and you won't look back. Trust me on that. If I'm wrong, you can hold me to that. We'll get back to you. That's right. Yeah. And then biggest myth about the trade industry. I mean, you've come into it from doing other stuff. What do you think the biggest myth still is?
That tradies rip people off. I think that's still a huge thing. I think that, and there's actually some other groups I'm in, renovation groups, where I see it all the time about, everybody thinking that they're getting ripped off by their tradie, and they don't realize, what goes on behind the scenes. And it's a huge myth of the industry that really needs to change.
I think it's it's a really interesting point, because I completely agree. I think there's a perception, actually, if you deal with most decent trade companies, they're all decent people that do great work and everything else. There's always one or two bad apples in every industry. I think, unfortunately, there were sort of TV programs over the years that have exacerbated this myth somewhat, and then everyone's watched those TV programs and they've heard one story that someone's had a bad experience. We've all had bad experiences with any industry at some point in time, so I agree that myth still seems to permeate. And it's not the case. If anything, I think a lot of trade companies undercharge, in my experience.
I absolutely agree.
It's the bigger issue, not the other way around. So but it's still a problem. I think that just takes time to, again, it's all perception, change those perceptions. Cool. And then last one is, anyone else that you come across that you think would be interesting for us to speak to on the podcast in the future?
I think it would be great to get, obviously, another woman in the trades, but one of the ladies I follow over on Instagram that I was talking about is a lady she goes under Melbourne Chippy Chick. And she's doing awesome things for the industry. So she would be great to. And
has she inspired you to be the carpenter?
Well, definitely nowhere near as talented as what she is, but yeah, that's watching her is definitely makes me think, oh yeah, that's something that maybe I would enjoy if ever I was on the tools.
Yeah, cool, great. Well, look, Verity, this has been a really great conversation. Again, appreciate TradieWives is an amazing place. So I'm really glad that we can be associated with it. It's a really cool area that you've created for people to get more from the trades, whilst also helping co-run a landscape business is really impressive. So appreciate you joining the show.
Thank you.
And as always, to all of our listeners, if you've enjoyed this, please do rate, review, give us all those great comments on Apple or whatever your chosen platform is, or YouTube. And as always, send us a note if you want to hear from people. If you want to be on the show, let us know. As always, thanks very much and speak to you next time. Cheers.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.